I'm Zach Varda, and this week on the Student Slant, the hype is real. Jasmine Hilton joins us to talk about her article featuring the custodial services at Ohio State that is driving discussion all over campus.
Yeah, so I was actually just scrolling through Twitter one day when a girl had tweeted about how dirty her residence hall bathrooms were. I mean, there were paper towels everywhere and just the bathrooms were dirty. And so the original idea was, okay, like, how do students feel about the dirtiness of their bathrooms? But then going to think about it on a further note is, okay, these custodians come in every day and they have to clean this. So ultimately, their perspective is the one that I've never heard, and I know many others haven't heard it either. So I said, okay, it should be on the custodians and how they feel about this. So I'm Jasmine Hilton.
I'm Zach Varda.
I'm Jake Ray, and this is the Student Slant. So yeah, we talked about your article, and we were originally looking at like how the bathrooms were just so dirty, and there was paper towels everywhere. How did you find someone to talk to? That was my main question when I was reading the article.
How did I find Barbara Benson?
Yeah.
It was almost like Barbara Benson came to me, honestly. I live on floor 10 of Park Stradley, and I know that she does Stradley side a lot, and then she also does Parkside. So when I heard that we had this feature story idea, I'm like, well, who would, be a good feature? So I would run into her in the hallway, and we would always have a chat. So when I came up with the idea, I was like, okay, this is the perfect person, because not only is she outgoing, but she loves talking to students, so she'd be the one to, really give me details on her life.
From my perspective, I'm obviously not a TA in the class like Jake is. It came to me as an editor when Jasmine pitched it to me to go in the Lantern. And for perspective, this article really took off. It's got to be up there. I don't know the exact analytics with the most read articles from campus this year, like quite easily up there with the most read, if not the most read. It was really a joy for me to get to publish it. So I guess my kind of question is, this is really your first attempt at feature writing, and it obviously went extremely well. What do you take away from, as someone just getting their feet in it, from feature writing versus news writing, and I guess what do you like about the two?
So I think that with features, the reason why I liked it so much because it was telling a story. Like, I don't know if I told Jake this, but I told Nicole, I really want to do this story justice. And so when I was thinking that, I was like, okay, like with features, that gives me time to do an anecdotal lead. I can go into more quotes. I can put more of my own flair on it. The thing with news writing for me is that I was having a little hard time because it's just like, it's so inverted pyramid. You've got things that happen, boom, 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 and it's not as leeway to really put your own twist on it as feature writing is. So, and even in the past, just in high school and just how I like to write, period, I think that storytelling has just always been my favorite. So when it came down to doing a feature, it just really fit into my category and my forte.
How does it feel to have something so well received as that story you get to tell that you wanted to tell and do it justice, to like kind of have that recognition that it was done really well?
Yeah, it's definitely a very, very gratifying just to see how the public received it, and just, I've received emails, I've received comments from alumni about how their custodians were overlooked, and just, I think the biggest thing that made me feel good is that, okay, I'm giving these individuals a voice, and that's just what's most important to me. I think that one of the reasons why it was most well received is because so many people said they didn't know that this is how they felt, and they didn't know how Miss Barb's everywhere may be going through. And so just to see that I was able to tell her story and give it justice makes me feel good, but I'm also happy that it was able to make an impact on our campus.
I think the first thing that caught my mind about the article when it came into me was the title, Seen But Not Heard. Obviously, we ended up having to put a little subtitle onto that, but right. Seen But Not Heard was capture it perfectly, and I kind of knew off the bat it was going to be something I really wanted to run with. And I think that kind of it sheds a light on the reason people get into journalism, and one of the main reasons why journalism is so important, because voice for the voiceless, as you just kind of touched on. So I guess how do you see your role as a journalist, obviously just starting to come up, and I'm kind of interested, is this why you got into journalism? What do you see your role as a journalist as representing those people, in this case, that keep Ohio State going,
right.
that nobody pays attention to?
I think my role as a journalist is to just always keep my eyes open and your ears open as well. You know, as far as like giving a voice to those who may feel as though they're overlooked, I think it's just my role, our role as journalists, just to be able to let them know that they are heard and that even though they feel as though sometimes people don't take notice, that one thing I always say is I'm a nosy person. Like, I always take a lot of notice to a lot of things. And so as a journalist, when I wanted to decide what I wanted to major in and just my career, I knew that I wanted to do something where I could put that curiosity to the test and make that curiosity count and just really use whatever talents that I've been given to give people a voice. And I think journalism not only allows you to do that through written works, but through speaking and like what we're doing here. I mean, it's just there's so many outlets to help people and to get stories told. You know, and a lot of people were saying, oh, well, like, how did you even like write this? Like, how did you know how to do it? And it was one of those things where I'm just like, you think of it as, okay, I'm just having a conversation with this person, and I want that conversation just in a written form and to hopefully, you know, do it justice.
So you obviously said you knew Miss Barbara Benson beforehand, who was, you know, really the main voice of this story.
Right.
It was more or less about her, but also the issue at large. So you knew her beforehand, but what was it like getting to go and have that conversation with her and kind of go and you had pictures from like the, you know, the supplies closets and, you know, you had taken notice of them, obviously, but then to really get to go and see what they do and pick their minds about what their perspective is like, you know, I guess just talk a little bit about what that experience is like.
Right. So that experience was very eye-opening. When I did ask Miss Barb for an interview or just to sit down and talk with her, I said, okay, like this only has to be 20 minutes. We were talking for an hour and a half. You know, that interview was so long. And during it, I learned so much about her life, about why she chose to be a custodian and why or how she sees her role here on campus. And so just going into it, there was a lot of stuff that I wish I could have put in that article about their everyday life and, you know, things that they're exposed to on a daily basis, not just in the bathrooms, but when they're cleaning, just everywhere on the residence halls. So it was really, really eye-opening to hear just her story and what they go through on a daily basis, which is a lot. You know, they're putting in hours and hours of effort. And I know I touched in the article how the next day they'll come and it's like, they have to do it all over again. So I think that the biggest thing I took away from that was that, okay, you know, you have to have some motivation. You have to have some passion for this work if you're going to do something and then see it, you know, tarnished the next day, but you still come in every day with that same spirit. And that's what just attracted me the most to Miss Barb is that she just had this spirit about her that she was very passionate and just wanted to help students.
What do you think made you take notice, I guess? Because being the TA of your course with 2221, we get story pitches, and Zach gets story pitches constantly.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, ideas just aren't really stories. But what made you see this, find this story, and think, yeah, like, this needs to be something that people need to know about?
I honestly went into it with a lot of doubts. You know, I didn't know that I would be able to be honestly capable of really giving it a story because I know that, like Zach said, you know, I'm first starting out, like this is all new to me, so I didn't know if there was a story there. But I know oftentimes we hear sometimes stories just write themselves, and it was like after that interview, I knew exactly what route I wanted to take with it. I knew exactly what direction I wanted to go. We spoke, and you said, hey, here are some ways that you can really just do the story justice and shine light on it. And so it was really after the interview when she was telling me exactly how she felt and what her role is on campus that I decided to take the route of, okay, how important are these individuals? You know, and like Zach said, even though Miss Barb was the main topic, it was really her representing an entire community. And so I think by taking that approach and like adding employees who keep Ohio State going, that's what it's all about. And that's kind of how I decided to go about it.
I have to say real quick, when you were talking, what I was reminded of is we had Holly Zachariah on the podcast, and she talked about how as a journalist, we always talk about you have to be objective, remove yourself from the situation, but she always talked about, you know, when you do feature writing, even some news writing, she still cares very deeply, and that's why she was in journalism. She's a caring person, and she cares about people, and she kind of wears her heart on her sleeve. And I think that came through. I mean, I could be totally off base, but I think that came through in your writing, that you care and that you really did want to make sure you were giving these people the light of day that they deserved. So I'm guessing kind of if you could talk about how without writing in first person, how you're able to pour your own emotions into a piece like this, because I think that definitely, came through in your writing.
So, not doing it in first person was a little hard because that's how I like to write. And so just being able to let my voice, be heard as well in that article as far as like my style, my passion being set into it. I think it was just one of those things where word choice really came into play. I went through each of those paragraphs and redid them tens and tens of times and just making sure that, okay, I have to remain objective at the same time, but my word choice, I want it to be just strong enough where that, okay, this care is here and okay, this passion is here for this. But I don't really have like a specific way that I did it. It was kind of just one of those things where I went through it and I kept rereading it and the word choice really came into play.
I have to say, it really impressed me just because I think like maybe one of my weaknesses as a writer is I definitely strive in news writing, but not in feature writing. My features tend to end up being straightforward, newsy, and then you don't get the emotion out of them. So, I mean, for me, getting my hands on that, I was blown away by it. Like, I don't know if I told you I loved it, but we haven't really had a chance to talk about it much. I mean, that's one of the stories that comes in. I'm like, oh, great, that's A1. That's going to dominate online. Like, the numbers are going to be great. I knew it from the second I read it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when she first showed it to me, like, in class. I was like, I had read some other ones, and I got through, like, her anecdotal lead, and I just knew. I was like, oh, yeah, you need to hand this in. Like, it's that good.
Yeah,
it needs to be published. It's a good story. You're telling, you're doing what we're supposed to do as journalists and, like, inspiring change. And it was a really good story.
Yeah, and I'm not a good feature writer. Like, I just, up front, so I'm always impressed by good feature writers. I think it's really such a skill, and it really speaks to the person that's writing it, because it takes such care, and it comes from, a good feature comes from a good person, and maybe that's why I can't write good features. But so yeah, it was a joy to get to run this, honestly. I would have to say, this isn't an exaggeration to say it was a privilege, like, to have this on the campus desk for the Lantern.
Wow,
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Do you feel like when you're looking for stories, like back to what we were talking about before, but do you feel like you look for something that may incite change, or do you look for like a strong person? Do you consider yourself like looking for a feature story?
Yes, 100%. I just, even from the start, from the first news article I wanted to write, I wanted it to be, impactful, because I think that's the most important part of journalism, is just being impactful and being able to incite change. That's what we want to do. When I write, I want people to take something from it, and that I've left something behind for them to think about once they're finished reading. And so every piece that I put out, whether it be news or feature, I want it to resonate with someone so they can say, okay, like, I want to do something about this and I want to make a change, and just personalize the writing almost. Even though it was seen, like you said, by thousands of people, I hope that every single person was able to take their own giveaway from it, and that's kind of why I write.
For anybody listening, you have to go to thelantern.com, search Seen But Not Heard, or go to the campus section. If you're listening to this and you're not reading the article, you're just doing yourself a great disservice.
That was a great discussion. Join us next week on the Student Slant for more student perspective.